You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show on a Memorial Day weekend, time where we honor our American troops who have fought in wars. And so we have an extended weekend. And of course, we want to remember the troops, but of course, we're here to talk about a different kind of war.
Right.
I've been working
different
on
type
that
of troopers.
Yeah. Been working on that one all day. Of course, I'm sure somebody is gonna be like all sensitive, like I just lost, or whatever. But
right, exactly.
Well, this one's interesting because we spent the last 4 or 5 weeks or whatever it's been reviewing Andor, and of course that was a pretty grim, deep, type of a thing that most of the people actually really enjoyed. That everybody was like, yes, this is what Star Wars should be. And now this actually snuck right in, probably like the second week or something. It came out May the 4th, where they dropped all the episodes of Tales of the Underworld. And I remember, I think we were doing I want to say it was like the second. I don't remember if we were doing episodes 1, 2, and 3 or 4, 5, and 6, but it was somewhere in there that we basically started getting questions, actually, like, hey, have you guys seen Star Wars, Tales of the Underworld or whatever? And at that point, I think you had seen a few of you had started watching them. I hadn't seen any of them. And in fact, I didn't even start watching them until you and I did it before the show last week. And of course, I rewatched them. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was really cool. And of course, we'll get into it. But I like the fact that they did the same thing that they did before. That they actually did. Like, the first 3 were about Asajj Ventress, and the second 3 were about Cad Bane. And for this one, we can be, they're only like 15 minutes apiece, right? I mean, we can probably walk through each episode, because I also like the way that it was laid out. I think this, in a lot of ways, even though they basically did the same thing for Tales of the Empire, I really like the way they laid this one out as far as the episodes. It actually kind of had an Andor vibe in that sense, where the second season of Andor, even though most would agree that the first season is probably the best, but the thing about the second season of Andor is I really like the way that everything was laid out, spaced, the way that they, went through the story and all that. And I thought the same thing here, is that you basically had a really nice first, second, and third act for each one of these. So overall, I think, it sits really nicely. But which did you like better, Tales of the Empire or this one?
I probably would say this one, just because I cared more about the characters, more or less, than the Tales of the Empire one. I mean, I think they're all great. I think the whole concept of it all is really great, just because we get to kind of put some characters under a microscope and kind of highlight them and go on this adventures specifically tailored to them, whether it's their origin story, whether it's a continuation of a story that we already know, something like that. I think that's really cool. Whether it's Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Underworld, there are, I'm sure we're probably going to get Tales of the Sith. That would be an awesome one, honestly.
Yeah, and that will probably end up being what the Acolyte should be.
Probably.
Or should have been.
Right. But yeah, I really enjoy the concept of it all. This is, and also it's not a whole lot of time for fluff, because these episodes are only 15 minutes, so you really have to get to the meat of the matter, and you don't have a whole lot of what some may call wasted movement. So yeah, I think that's really good, and this shows that you can tell a very concise story in a short period of time that's compelling, that has character development and all the drama, the action. You can have all that in a 15, 20-minute episode and really knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. one of the things that I actually like about this series is that it's not overly drawn out. Each
Hmm.
episode is somewhere between like 14 and 18 minutes. It gets right to the point. It doesn't drag anything out. It doesn't hang on useless plot points. I mean, as we get into it, there are some people I think that maybe, I mean, I don't know that I would even agree, but I think some complaints were the fact that some people were not as happy or whatever with the Asajj part of it because there were places in there, even though for the story they were telling, I thought they moved it along really, really well. You know,
Hmm.
I mean, sure, maybe the payoff wasn't what they wanted, because it was a little bit light in the plot, I guess. I mean, there wasn't really any meaty or weighty type of a storyline going. There wasn't some canon moving thing. I mean, other than, the path, they were basically bringing that into it. But I mean, other than that, yeah, obviously the Cad Bane story arc was way more dramatic and emotional and everything else. So I mean, I get that, but I agree. I mean, I think that this was better than Tales of the Empire simply because the characters, and I
Yeah.
also thought there was some wasted opportunity too, because even though I didn't necessarily care about seeing a story with those characters, they could have made us care a little bit more. So I think that maybe there was a missed opportunity there.
Yeah, I think with the whole Asajj Ventures piece, yeah, you kind of it kind of sets you up at first like it's going to be some really big canonical movement here because we see Quinlan Voss. They're going. He's with Obi-Wan. He brings her body to back to the Dathomir, and so you're kind of thinking like, all right, so things are going to happen here, and like you said, they talked about the path. So I'm thinking we're going to see that continuation of their relationship or something to that effect, and we didn't get that. But like I said, the story was still cool. Um, it was like and I think the whole thing was trying to show Asajj going away from the dark and really just kind of being more of a everyday or a nicer person, I guess if you want to call it that. The
Yeah.
Cad Bane piece was really cool because now we got to see a lot of his origin, and it's like all right, that was and that's the thing sometimes. Like sometimes you don't think, and I've been guilty of this, that sometimes you don't think that you need an origin story of somebody, and in a way you don't until you get it, and then you're like, oh wow, I'm glad they've done this now because I would have missed out on all this. But it's like, did I need it? Probably not. But now that
No.
I have it, though, sometimes it's like, well, I'm glad they decided to do this because I would have never thought about this, but now I'm invested. So it's kind of a weird thing, but I enjoy that part.
Well, they did it right. That's the
Yeah,
other
and
thing. I mean, I think
exactly.
because yeah, I would have argued that we didn't need an origin story for Cad Bane. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
need to see a little. Well, we did get the origin story of Boba Fett, um, which that of course is probably a little bit more necessary just because of the canonical change that they made.
And
But
his iconic status too. I mean,
yeah,
Boba
yeah,
Fett is has always been an iconic figure, as opposed to Cad Bane, who has recently become a fan favorite. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like he
right.
wasn't back in 1977 or 1980 for that matter.
No, and I mean the thing is, like, I don't need to see a little baby Bosk or I mean, there's just
Right.
like there's a lot I
Or
think
scene.
sometimes that it's almost more effective if you don't get the origin story with some characters. But I felt the same way that you did. I mean, I was like, I don't know if I really want a Cad Bane story because on one hand, it's like, sure, it would be interesting to see how he got into his life of crime, as it were. But see, if they mess it up, and this is the thing I always hate about anything Star Wars related now, if they mess it up, it's messed up. Like it's messed up for
Hmm.
all time. I mean, when you mess up a Star Wars, it can ruin a character for, you know,
Yeah.
for decades to come, especially the other thing that it could do is boxing you in on particular story points where if you keep somebody's whole story thread loose, it gives you a little bit of latitude that you can use when you're telling new stories. But like
Yeah.
you, I thought the same thing. I'm like, they actually did it right, and that's the key. If you do it correctly, it could add a lot, and it could give you a little bit of an emotional tie-in, and pretty much give you some reasons why they are the way they are. And of course, when you know that, knowing his backstory now, when we see him in future things, you're thinking back on that, and you can almost understand why he might make certain decisions. So I guess there is that. All right, well, Ted had joined us for a minute, but he said, look, at the movies with Mission Impossible 8, so technically it's 7 part 2, by the way. It's not technically 8, just had to bring that up. So I'll catch this tomorrow, but looking forward to it, guys. I may even rewatch these cartoons. Call them cartoons. People hate that. Tomorrow, too, as I found them enjoyable. Thanks, guys. Yeah, we'll let that one go. We're not as sensitive as some of the people, but yeah, some people you call...
It's an animated series. It's like, okay, relax.
Well, and I get it, because cartoons does sound a little kid-like.
Cheesy.
Or
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I get it. But, yeah, I mean, right from episode 1, I mean, I think you really had to break down the first 3, because that's probably what we should do. It's like, take the first 3, the Asajj Ventress thing, and then we can go into the CAD thing. With Asajj, I think the first part of it, obviously, is we have to get Asajj back to, well, first of all, the land of the living, because she was killed off in A New Dawn, so you had to explain that, that I'm really glad they did. Because unlike the Sarlacc pit with Boba Fett, like, that was always talked about in the expanded universe, but it was never made canon, but most people were like, yeah, that's how it's going to be. But at least there was something out there. There was something that fans can hold on to. With Asajj, we saw her make her return, but yet we never knew, like, how that happened. And so I'm glad that they dealt with that. And of course, it was about her wanting this peaceful, quiet life. And then, of course, she has to make the decision, like you alluded to be, that level of good. Because obviously it's like, well, okay, she's a good guy now. We know that. But how good is she? That's the question. And of course, the second episode goes a lot more into trust. Who do you trust? What kind of people do you trust? That's basically what it's all about. And then, of course, the final one is now you're dealing with the remnants of the war, where you had, the commander or whatever. He just, war is the only thing that he really knows, and he looks at it like that. And it's like, well, look, you're stealing these people's water. You're kind of in the wrong here. And
right.
Even that comment that he makes towards the end about, well, they're animals or whatever. It's like, I can't communicate with these people. It's like it gives you an idea of some of those old war type attitudes still lingering, and just kind of how to do that. So, I mean, within that framework, there was just a lot of really cool, interesting things that happened, obviously, which in each of those 3. But I mean, to me, that was pretty much, like, if you had to categorize each episode, that's basically the arc.
Yeah, I would definitely go with that. I think, once we see that Obi-Wan and Quinlan Voss bring Asajj's body to like the Dathomir, I guess, healing pools or whatever you want to call those things. And she had, like you said, she had to make a choice, and in that choice, she wants to go back to the living, but she would kind of have to forsake everything that she knew beforehand. Like, she couldn't necessarily just return back to Quinlan and just, as things were before. So when she does come back and she does, try to live a quiet life, she's basically like a glorified TSA agent, but it's cool for her. She's all right. I'm just making sure people are following the rules, getting on these transports. They're not trying to sneak on and all that type of stuff. And then she kind of gets suckered in to a whole situation by this kid who obviously is a former Jedi who still is very green. can't even do simple uh
Mind
a
trick.
Jedi mind trick. Yeah, it's a simple Jedi mind trick on some stormtroopers, and she ends up bailing them out, and she in turn used a Jedi mind trick, on them, and that's when he realized, like, oh, he thinks she's a Jedi this whole time. And he's like, not exactly.
Hmm.
So then now, he's of course inquisitive, trying to figure out who are you, and she eventually had to admit, like, look, I was an assassin for Dooku. I probably killed a bunch of people that you know. This is what it is, but I'm the best shot you got out to get out of here. So, I mean, if you want to, go find this path or whatever, your best chance is with me. But the thing that kind of suckered her in was the the dangling of the carrot that Quinlan Vaught started this whole thing, and so now she's kind of wanting to see if she can kind of get back to him. So I like the fact that we see different avenues of her, where we can kind of see the bit of love that she has for Quinlan. We also see that she's trying to be just a better person, just in normal day life, just like, look, I just want a regular job, stay out the way. But then she's also willing to like get in the mix and help someone, who she doesn't have to, but she felt compelled to. And so this is definitely a new age of Asajj Ventress. And, I thought that was really interesting.
Well, not only that, I mean, there's a couple of things that you look at. Number one, you look at this thing based on choices, right? I mean, that's one of the things you talked about was the choices. It was interesting to me because this is one of the things that hit me. Well, there's actually two things in that beginning scene. First of all, it was like, okay, how many times can you keep getting dipped in that pool and coming back? Like, is that just like a one-time thing? Or, okay, now she gets like, offed again by somebody, could somebody just bring her back to that little pool? And it's like, oh, you again. All right. Well, that,
There was like
yeah.
the
I mean,
the
it's just,
supreme back to tank or
yeah, I
something,
just
like,
kind of wonder how many times you can keep dipping in that thing and coming back. But that was the first thing that I have to admit hit me. But the second thing, it was interesting because the whole reason why she wanted to come back was to go back to Quinlan. And yet, the choice that she had to make was either like stay here or, you can go back to the living, but you have to forsake everything that you care about, love, whatever. It's like, well,
hmm
then why
what's the
even go
point?
back? Right,
Right.
exactly. So I really wonder, and I don't even know, like, because I mean, sure, they probably are putting this in for dramatic effect. I mean, Filoni's pretty cerebral when it comes to Star Wars, so I can't help but think that maybe this is going to be addressed again because that's a pretty big thing when you talk about the whole reason why you're going to come back, you can't do. Now,
hmm
I mean, it doesn't stop her from, I guess, seeking him out, but at the same time, it's just sort of like even back at when you just go back to the pool, when you had that initial choice, it's like, well, why bother? It's like if I have to forsake everything that I love and care about, well, then there's really no point to doing this. Unless, it's kind of like, all right, well, I'll just go have another goal or something. I mean, I don't know. It just,
Yeah, probably just to start life all over again.
yeah, and I guess you could do a fresh start and, you know, I guess, but I mean, but from her standpoint, though, her whole reason for going back was to go back to him. So it's interesting on why she decided to do it. Unless she
Yeah.
was just going to be like, oh, yeah, all right, cool. Let me go back and just basically disregard that choice. It's like, well, I'm not going to forsake everything I love. I'll say whatever I have to get out of this thing. And then, once I'm back in the land of the living, just do my thing.
Or it could be like one of those 51st date situations where you constantly are like in his face and he kind of has to, like, you may be able to rekindle that love organically
Oh,
somewhat,
I see. Yeah. Well,
you
but
know.
the thing is, it would be like that if nobody had any memories. Because that's the thing about 51st dates is the fact that her memory kept getting erased every day. So every day it was literally like a new thing, but Asajj didn't have that.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is for Quinlan, it probably would be. Maybe. I don't know because we never see them reunite, so we don't know
Yeah.
if he would, recognize that. So that's a good point.
Well, and it's also a good point that, maybe being in that pool or something like that, it's like, okay, you got to do this. But then again, see, I would venture to say no. And the reason why I would say that is because in the third episode, that commander recognized her instantly. And,
Well, yeah, the commander did.
well,
Yeah.
and presumably, and sure, you could, if you really wanted to split hairs, you could be like, but he didn't love her though. It's sort of like, and she didn't love him. And it's almost like, is there some Dathomir magic that happens like, okay, you can go back, you got to forsake everything you love. So that way, anybody that you love, their memory is wiped or something, and some weird Men in Black type of thing going on.
A little flashy thing.
I mean, it's possible, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And then I think the whole her willingness trying to help this kid, kind of gave her a new purpose. I think that's also what we kind of got a chance to see was she had a new mission. She had a new thing like, okay, I got to get him to um this path. And the thing is she had the opportunity to keep pursuing it, but she didn't. So you kind of almost have to wonder like what made her stop? What made her just say like, you know what? Almost like a Kylo Ren thing, like let the past die almost.
Yeah, that's actually a good point because at first she was trying to get back to him, and then all of a sudden, right after the whole skirmish and they get to the point where they can actually go back, she sends him on his way, but then she's just like, "Yep, I'm done."
Hmm.
So, right, why is that? Why did she change her mind all of a sudden? And then, I mean, that's just basically what it comes down to me. There was just like a lot of little nuances in the episode, and I recognize, especially with stuff like this, you're probably meant to just take the surface level. I don't know really how much you're supposed to try to read into this stuff, but
Hmm.
there was just a lot of unanswered questions that the show itself brought up. It's kind of like, all right, well,
Yeah.
I mean, the show brought it up. So
Yeah.
if
So
they
now you
didn't,
feel like you have to answer it in the show.
well, either that or at least hint that there might be an answer. Because see, here's the other thing, and I remember you said this when we were actually reviewing Tales of the Jedi, and we were talking about the Dooku arc. I remember we both actually said at the end, like, wow, I really hope they continue this. Because our whole thing at the time, Tales of the Jedi was the first one to come out. So
Hmm.
we thought there was going to be a Tales of the Jedi Volume 2, Volume 3, that kind of a thing. And then, of course,
Yeah.
they threw you a little bit. So the question remains, are they ever going to, in some capacity, actually continue on with the storylines of this stuff?
Yeah. Like circle back, like baby, like we get to Tales of the Sith, and then that's like the end of volume 1 for this whole series, and then we start back again with Tales of the Jedi volume 2,
Sure. I
Tales of the
mean,
Empire.
because
To
it would just seem a
I mean that
shame
could
to,
be.
and I would hope so, because it would seem a shame
Hmm.
to bring out all these storylines and never resolve them. I mean, at least with the Dooku one, you can go, all right, well, we know how that ends, right? I mean, we know
Yeah.
that it's going to end with basically like Revenge of the Sith. But with this, we don't know where this is going. And I mean, I guess you could say in a weird sort of way that it did resolve because she's just going to ride off with this kid. And you can say almost what you alluded to in the beginning, where she started out really wanted to reunite with Quinlan Voss and then was like, you know what? Let me let that go. There's no real future for me with this. Who knows what all that having to forsake everything I love thing is. Maybe she didn't want to reunite with him only to be taken away from him again. I mean, there could be a lot of
Hmm.
reasons, but it could be that with this kid, now she's not thinking of, I want to pursue this love that I have, and more so like, hey, this kid needs me. Maybe I better guide him and stick with him. And in some ways, maybe right all the wrongs that, she did in a way, and try to be like a better master to him than Dooku was to her.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I think she's going to get the opportunity to teach
Hmm.
and understand what that's like, and try to, because and it was cool that they kind of started to form their own little bond.
Yeah.
with each other.
And it could very well be that maybe this opens the door to, kind of a what was the kid's name? Like or oh man, I don't
Ooh,
remember.
the kid from the
Yeah, the
episode.
kid. Yeah, the kid from the episode.
Oh,
It was like Leica
uh,
or like something.
Lako.
Something.
Yeah, Lako. I think that was his name.
Yeah, well,
I'm gonna look it up.
yeah, look it up. I don't want to butcher this any more than I already have. I mean, he even said the name in the episode. That's what was so funny.
Right.
Because he actually said, because a lot of times in these things, they don't even, like you don't find out these people's names unless you read it in the credits or you look on IMDb or something and they give you the character's name, but they're never spoken in the movie or the show. So, I mean, I don't know. But I mean, the point being, though, that I think that what this kid, let's see, Lyco, that's his name.
Lako. Yeah.
So, when you deal with her to Lyco basically saying, all right, yeah, you're not going to be able to survive without me pretty much. Let me now be the teacher that I wish I had, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that could very well be. I mean, we really don't know, but I really hope that they actually circle back and continue this story because I think that it's a really good one. And again, I have a feeling that Asajj is going to, in a lot of ways, pop up in things very much the same way Maul did. That there'll be these projects that pop up and it's like, oh, Asajj is back.
Yeah, I could see that happen. Definitely.
I would like that to happen. That would be nice. Now, Cad Bane episodes. Those actually were... Now, that was a more straightforward story.
Yeah.
That's the total, like, Chicago or New York gangster. You got the two, like, childhood best friends. One grows up to be a cop. One grows up to be a criminal. Then they have to face each other. And it was also very neat and orderly the way that it was done, because the first episode obviously deals with their friendship and their childhood and how they got mixed up with Laszlo. And then you had the middle episode where, the marshal kills Laszlo, and now Nero is basically on the side of the law, and Cad, of course, is on side of the criminal and wants to get revenge. And then, of course, it comes to a head in the third episode where they actually have to face off against each other. So that one was a little bit more of a straightforward story.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I think it's something that we've seen before. We've seen this story trope.
Oh, virtually almost every gangster movie. Like the
Yeah,
Bronx
like
Tale
it kind of
comes to
reminds me
mind.
of Bronx Tale, Goodfellas kind of reminds me, of that a little bit.
Well, the Bronx Tale was like a direct, like that was, two childhood best friends. One becomes a cop, one becomes a gangster. But yeah, that's been done in a lot of different ones, no doubt.
Yeah. And I think that was just a really cool story, just because you see how they kind of start off in this impoverished situation, and then they get seduced by the life. Like, you know what? I don't have to be poor if I just kind of do this. And of course, I think Nero would have stayed with him had he not got jammed up, but then he got caught, Cad got away, and their lives were just forever changed after that moment. So when Cad comes back and after Laszlo is killed by the marshal, it's like, okay, now what do you do? It's between you and your, former best friend, but you got your own little crew now. You got this whole lifestyle that you're doing that's completely different. And it's like, man, you still have love for your friend, but it's like, got a job to do, or I have a
Well, that's what was so funny because when they reunited after they were older, he was all hugging him like, "Oh, it's my dearest older friend." Oh, wait a minute,
yeah,
you're on the
man.
side of the law.
Uh, he's
Attitude
like, okay,
changed a
he's
little
like,
bit. The
well,
other
ain't this
thing,
a
the other thing that was so funny to me was that when we basically see Cad a little bit older, it's in the second episode, and one of the green ones comes up and says something to him, and it was in a woman's voice. At first, I was like, "Oh man, Nero went through some changes over the years," because they don't give
yeah,
you any context.
right.
I mean, that was one of the things that I thought was both cool and somewhat confusing with this one because, I mean, look, it's obviously a very easy, storyline, plot device, whatever to follow, right? I mean,
Hmm.
nobody's really going to get lost, but some of the nuances, because did they ever mention what planet it is?
No.
And I mean, they obviously modeled it after New York, the city. It's like
Hmm.
kind of like the old, 1930s
Or
New
Chicago.
York.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of
or
those.
Chicago. I was thinking that too. Like it could be an either or thing because they were very much similar.
Yeah.
Different vibes, obviously, but a very similar type of a thing where the gangs are running it. And I thought that that was really interesting because, again, and this is one of the things that I always loved. These are things we have not seen in Star Wars. And that brings up
Well, yeah, I
another
think.
genre film too, right? Let's do a gangster film in Star Wars. You could do it.
Well, that's the thing. I was just about to bring up. Like, George Lucas had plans to do
Mm,
that whole Underworld,
yeah.
series anyway.
Yep. That's true.
Where it's like, it's basically like, the underbelly of
Coruscant
Coruscant and
1313 or something, I think it was
yeah,
called.
1313, yeah. And that was gonna be like the whole, dealing with the Huts, the spice runners, the smugglers, the bounty hunt, like all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm
And these
interested
are
to see. Now we're like, Cadman, who's going to talk?
oh yeah. But yeah, I think that's just a cool concept, and I would love to have seen this more fleshed out, like in this, and almost in live action. I think this would have been a really good live action.
Oh, this would have been
Uh,
an amazing live action. I wouldn't
yeah.
mind. They could have done more of a fleshed out series, or they could have just done a movie, a la Goodfellas, Bronx Tale, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Gangs in New York, whatever.
Okay, yep.
And that's what I meant by just doing like a gangster style, the Untouchables, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Do something in that vein and have it be like Andor, where you don't necessarily have Jedi and Sith and, you're dealing with the really big stuff. They could have just kept it because I felt the same way you did. I was like, I thought the pacing was actually good for a 3-episode arc. They
Mm-hmm.
divided it nicely. Hey, look, episode 1, we're going to deal with here's our friendship and here's us as kids, and we're getting our first taste of this criminal life. And then the second one, okay, now we had
Some
gone
time
our
has gone
separate
by.
ways. Yeah, some time has gone by. It was enough of a jump. Now we're seeing, Cad he's a criminal, but he's still kind of an apprentice. He's not quite there yet. And of course, his mentor in crime gets killed and he goes to face the marshal. And it's like, but he doesn't yet have the skills to pull it off. And then, of course, we see the final one where it's like the two friends reunite on opposite sides. Now, Cad is the Cad Bane that we all know. Because again, another
Mm-hmm.
time jump. So I mean, for a 3-episode arc, I did think it was good. I thought it moved well. However, my problem is much like you. It's not really a criticism. It's really more like, man, I would have loved to have seen like a whole expanded, maybe like a
Yeah.
6 to 8 episode thing, or really,
Mm-hmm.
this is something I wouldn't mind seeing as a movie.
Well, yeah. I mean, because I think you had a little bit, especially when we get to the episode 3, or the third episode. Let me not say episode 3, but the third episode in this. Um, I think the whole twist of he Nero married or had a child with the woman that Cad was already like that was part of his team,
Right,
and
the
I
one
don't
that I
think they
thought
were
was Nero as a woman. So it
right,
fits. Hey man, it's like,
right.
look, they're both green. Of course they had a blue kid. That's another thing, man. What's with the green and blue? They never really explain like what are the parameters behind. Because I
Hey,
remember, didn't
it's
you say what was it
well.
that
At
you
first, I thought
thought?
it was I thought it was like female versus male, but then that
Yes.
was disproven. Yeah, it could be like a light skin versus dark skin thing. I don't know. I mean,
Mm.
or I don't
Yeah,
know.
I mean it's just kind of weird because
It's different complexions within the same race.
because usually in Star Wars you don't see that. You'll see like slightly different, or it's like you have the Twi'leks versus the what's that other,
Uh,
you know what I'm talking about, the other group that has the LQ. Because of
Relax
the
and
T, I think it's like I can't remember.
uh, Tagruta.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Exactly. So it's sort of like you can see it like, okay, these are like two different races. They just have kind of a similar look to them. But it's
right. Almost
very
like a Japanese Chinese type thing. Like
right.
there's similarities definitely, but
Right.
there's
They're
slight differences
Asians,
where
but they're like different. Right.
yeah.
But this, it just seems they're interchangeable. And at first, it confused me because I wasn't sure if there was some like indication of, like you said, oh, is this a male female thing? Is this, you know, like, is there something that I should be noticing about this? Because it was a very obviously deliberate, decision. Now, of course, it probably was, hey, let's just make them green and blue, you know?
Yep. That was the extent that went into that.
That's probably all it is, but
Yep.
I mean, obviously, as Star Wars fans, we always look for like the deeper meanings behind stuff. And obviously, we don't know what planet this is. And I'm not even sure. I'd have to go back because it's something that I never actually bothered to look up to see, well, what planet is Cad Bane from? Do they even like mention it? Or is this the first appearance in canon?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole even barring their complexion and whatnot, I think that um the whole concept of it was just really good because it added an extra layer of drama. Because not only do you have like two friends who are opposite sides of the law, but then Cad gets sent away for some time. He gets released. Of course, he wants revenge. But then when he finally does come home and sees it's like, okay, I'm ready to get my revenge. One of his guys is like, yeah, well, where's Aaron? About her. Yeah. So she kind of married the marshal and had a kid. Well, no, married the marshal. Didn't even know he had a kid yet. And then that was another twist. Like they just kept adding more layers. So then now this kid that we've been seeing running around is like now really is Cad Bane's kid. And it's like, ooh,
Yeah, it was a
oh
great final
well.
line. It's like, he took everything from me. Well, not everything, as he's
Not
dying.
everything, exactly.
So
Exactly.
Dwight's watching. Dwight clears. He says the males on Dathomir are two different colors, and that's true. That's right. Because Savage was like that orange and black or whatever, and then of
Yeah,
course
he was kind of
Maul
more of a
is red.
yep.
So yeah, that's true. You do have another instance where there's like but I could see that because if I'm not mistaken, the Dathomir thing, Dathomir is almost like it's tribal, and I know that I remember reading once because once Phantom Menace came out, and then Clone Wars came out, and then so you had a lot of this other stuff. It was really interesting because they started going into a little bit more of like, just the way that a lot of these different tribes and stuff were on Dathomir because it was, I'm trying to remember the witches from the expanded universe because that's really the Dathomir witches. They're somewhat like modeled after that. Oh man, I'm like so bad today.
Oh, Cad Bane is from Duro.
Duro. See, I thought that that they mentioned it like in the Clone Wars or something. So I guess that's the planet then.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a good point though. Yeah, you do have but I'm just wondering if there's any significance, or is it just like, yeah, it's going to make a bunch of like some people that are green, some that are blue. But at first I thought there was a really like different significance to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess not.
So between
Although,
the two, oh, go ahead.
well, I was just thinking, that whole twist, if you're really paying attention, wasn't too much of a twist because, obviously, Nero and, Cad's former girlfriend, now Nero's wife, they're both green. They have a blue kid.
Yeah, the DNA.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, look, man, Cad. I mean, if I were Cad, as soon as I saw him, I'd be like, really?
Yeah.
But
So
that
between the
said,
two episodes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
what, the two, like, are you talking about the two sections, or are you talking about, are we still
Sections.
within,
Yeah.
okay.
But you had a point about this section, so I want you to finish that.
Well, I was just thinking that it was really weird to me that the kid, I mean, he looked obviously very confused because obviously, like, he just saw Cad just mow down what he thought was his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, his reaction was just a little strange.
Yeah, I think it's probably just the shock of it all.
I
Like I think there's a
guess.
shock of like, this was the only person I knew as my father, and then now I'm coming to the realization that wait, you might be my father, and
And Luke thought he had it
I'm
bad.
yeah, exactly. And then I just watched you mow down again the guy I consider my dad, but am I supposed to love you after this? Like how? Like
Well, the
it's
weird thing about
conflicting.
it, if you think about it, like, yeah, you bring it up, right? The guy he thought was his dad. Like, okay, to him, that was his father. So first, he's watching somebody mow down his dad, and then finding out that's not his dad, and the person that mowed him down is your dad.
It's his dad. Yeah.
That's a lot to take in.
Exactly. It's like all within like, a few moments and
Yeah,
just
like in
like
nanoseconds or whatever. I mean, that's
it's
that's
like,
just a
wait,
lot to.
what?
That's a lot to process, maybe in like a few second, span of time or whatever. But I digress. Now go ahead. I'm done.
No, I was just gonna say between the two sections, which one was your favorite?
Oh
The
man,
Asajj or the Cab?
probably the CAD just because there was more weight to it. Um, there was just it was plus it was different. The Asajj thing was awesome and I loved it. And of course, Asajj has, become one of my favorite characters over the years. Like I ever since Asajj Ventress came out, um probably the she was actually in that original version of the Clone Wars, I think.
Hmm.
The 15-minute
Yep.
ones or whatever. Yeah.
Yep. She
And
sure
then of
was.
course they fleshed her out in the regular Clone Wars. So I mean,
Hmm.
I was on board with her from the beginning. I thought she was a great character. I loved her. As time went on, it wasn't like Ahsoka. Ahsoka annoyed me and I hated her at first, and then she grew into one of my favorite characters. Asajj was pretty much one of my favorite characters right off the bat. So I like the fact that they're expanding her story, they're continuing it, and it was good. I mean, it really was good. The problem that I had with it, aside from a lot of the points that we made, right? We did show that there was probably more depth in that episode, or I should say that trilogy, than what I think a lot of people would, watching would just understand, right? Like they would probably watch it and go, kind of a filler thing, kind of fluff, not a whole lot of weight. But there really was a lot that you can, glean from it, and maybe it wasn't terribly canon moving,
Hmm.
like it didn't actually further any of the canon much at all, other than, of course, showing us how she came back. I mean, I guess that's big. But the Cad Bane one just had so much weight, so much drama. It was basically like typical gangster story, you know, two friends wind up on opposite sides of the law, eventually have to face each other. I mean, that could have been a film if they had just expanded it a little bit more and put it in live action. So, yeah, I'm going to
Hmm.
have to go with probably the Cad Bane.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I definitely would agree.
Yeah, I mean, it just, but that's not to necessarily disparage the fact, because if you think about it, the fact that it's such a lightweight story, I mean, it was really good. And like you said, the whole thing with Quinlan and Obi-Wan there, and so there were some things about the first one, trust, the fact that she felt somewhat responsible for the kid. I thought that was really cool. I mean, there was just like a lot to like. So I liked it. Borderline loved it, but the Cad Bane one, like you said, that was something like we said in the beginning of the show, right? Like I didn't care about his origin story, but then when you see it, you're like, "Oh, this is amazing."
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
now it's something that, you're like, "Well, I guess I
Now I
did
want to see
need it."
more.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
right. Not only do you realize like, "Okay, I guess I did need it, or it was really nice to have," but now you're like, "Hey, I want to see more of this."
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, man, absolutely. Two enthusiastic thumbs up on that one. But the question becomes now, of course, what are we actually going to do now for next week's episode? Cuz we've actually had like multiple weeks of Andor, and then it was while we were doing the last episode they were like, "Ooh, let's just do Tales of the Underground," cuz we were watching it. Underworld. I always say
Underworld.
that. At least I don't say underwear. Tales of the Underwear would be, maybe that would be a
Yeah,
different, that's a different
that
series.
that's a show that had to come on at like
Yeah.
12:30
And
a.m.
and I'd be okay with Asajj being in it. I want to see Cad Bane.
Yeah, so needs to see his quick
Yeah.
draw, if you know what I mean.
Nope. Nope. Don't want to be anywhere near that.
But I think I kind of have something working up in my head, for next week. I'm gonna kind of finish putting it together, and it might be a cool little debate. So
All right. Well, you guys heard it here first. Uh Probably some sort of cool little debate for next week. But yeah, let us know in the comment section, of course, what you guys thought of this Tales of the Underworld series. Which part did you like better? Did you like the Asajj storyline better? Did you like the Cad Bane storyline better? Give it a rating. We should give it a rating too, like each one.
hmm, hmm. I think Asajj, I'll give uh, a 7, and then for Cad Bane, I'll give that an 8.
Oh, so close. So I had 7 for Asajj and 8.5 for Cad Bane.
Mm, okay, I can see that.
I
I
mean,
can see that.
I'm giving it an extra half a point just because they could have made that cheesy. Like they really, I mean, it was a fine line that they had to walk in order to pull that off. And yet I was really amazed at, how they pulled off the drama and all that. Again, it was literally like watching these typical gangster movies that you see, to the point where you almost forget it's an animated series. And anytime something can do that for me, I'll try to give it a half a point extra.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, hopefully if you guys are watching in the United States, you have a good rest of your Memorial Day weekend, and you know, honor the troops and
Yes.
all that. Oh, we got another one
Absolutely.
from Dwight. Dwight says Baines is more interesting, solid 9. Asajj was good, not great, a good 7. All
Okay.
right, so he's going even a half a point above me. But pretty much we're all hanging with 7s for
Definitely.
Asajj.
Yeah, 7s for Asajj, and we all can say that Bane was a better story. So
Yeah, Bane was a better story.
well, we're in one accord.
Yeah. So we'll see what everybody else thinks. Maybe I'll put a poll up and, see what everybody thinks about that too. Again, another thing I should mention, besides, of course, the typical like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. But in addition to what you thought of, like, say, this series, what you guys thought of each of the stories, which one did you like better? Another thing you guys can always put in the comment section is any topic ideas. So if you have any ideas of things you'd like to see us cover on the show or us discuss, or you're like, hey, I want to talk about this with you guys, well, then put it in the comment section and, we can work on it. All right. Well, I guess it's going to
Most
wrap
definitely.
it. Yeah, it's going to wrap it up for us. And we'll see you guys next Sunday. With that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the force be with you, always.